right. Today I'll be talking about the US tariff. Last week I did a video, and the video basically talked about is Nigeria losing 10%, the source of 10% of its trade. Uh, and some people are of the opinion that Nigeria is not losing 10% of its trade, which I agree with anyway. I agree with it quite all right. I posed that question or made that statement to let you understand the gravity of what is going on. But towards the end of the video, I mentioned that there are things we need to do to actually take advantage of the situation. Because if you look at it very well, we are actually at an advantage. If you look at those situations very well. So in this video, I'll be looking at how Nigeria can leverage the Trump tariff. How Nigeria can leverage the Trump tariff. The Trump tariff, call it a blessing, call it a blessing in disguise. And the reason why I say call it a blessing is because in the real sense of the word, we can actually leverage the opportunities, even though I talked about the fact that we might be losing. So it's like you have an opportunity that can help you grow your trade, but if you don't take advantage of it, you will be losing 10% of the source of your trade. But if you take advantage of it, you might be leveraging it to grow your trade. And so my focus today is on the positive side, the fact that we can actually leverage it to grow trade. That's my focus today. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that US have released a large number of tariffs. My focus in this is Nigeria. For China, from 67 to 34%, European Union, 20%, Vietnam, 46%. The interesting thing I see in all this is the fact that for countries that are major exporters, Trump is increasing their tariff. And that is giving opportunity to the countries who are not doing a lot in the export space to take advantage of. It all depends on the size that you see. So I try to analyze this data, and I'll be showing you a lot of statistics this morning. For if you see this video on TikTok, you can check on YouTube, Global Trade Tutor, and you will see some of the charts. But if you see this video on TikTok or on LinkedIn, you are not likely to see the chart. But if you want to see the chart I will be talking about, then you can go to Global Trade Tutor and you see some of the chart. But you at least get to hear the figure as I mentioned some of them. So major countries in the world that are exporting have very high tariff. Like China, 34, US slamming 34. European Union controlling about 1/3 of trade, 20. Vietnam, 46. And a number of other countries like that who are major traders in the world. Now, and the reason why this data is important, I will come back to it, because what I will do this morning is to look at the low-hanging fruit. What are the low-hanging fruit? And by low-hanging fruit, I mean, what are the products that Nigeria currently exports more to the US? Top item of export of Nigeria to the US, and how do we increase the volume? Because we're already exporting it. That means there is demand. That means they are buying. That means the quality is okay. That means there are buyers, but we are not taking good advantage of the market size. And I'll show you the market size this morning. So if you look at Africa, for example, in that list of Trump, in that Trump list, you see a number of African countries. Ghana is 10%, Ethiopia is 10%, Namibia is 21%, Nigeria is 14%, Kenya is 10%, Algeria is 30%. Algeria is 30%. Algeria is 30%. Now, what are the products? What are the low-hanging fruit? And by that, I mean the product that Nigeria should actually take advantage of. What are the low-hanging fruit? the product that Nigeria can take advantage of. And by that, I mean the product that Nigeria currently exports to the US. We have mineral fuel and gas. We have fertilizer. We have lead articles. We have cocoa preparation. We have live trees and other plant bulb roots, concord flowers like hibiscus flower. We have oil seed like granite, like sesame seed, like soya beans seed and the like. We have plastic and article of plastic. We have edible fruits. We have iron article. We have fish and concentration. And if you look at it, crude oil, about 4.73 billion. Petrol gas, about 920 million. Fertilizer, about 167 million. Lead, about 74. Cocoa and cocoa preparation, about 32 million. Oil seed, about 15 million. Plastic, about 8 million. Edible fruit and nut, about 7 million. Article of iron and steel, 5.72 million. Prostitution, about 5.54 million. Now, this figure underscores Nigerian composition of export to the US. And I mean the predominant export. Predominant export. Now, what I want to do in this video is to show the volume of demand of those predominant exports. So we have an idea of our contribution, the fact that we are doing so little. And then check who are the major exporters of those products. And then check what is the tariff that is slammed on this major exporter of those products. What is the tariff slammed on the major exporter of those products? And then begin to look at the opportunities that is available. Because if such products that Africa or Nigeria is currently exporting is in high demand, but the country that is a major exporter of it is currently among the countries that have the high tariff from the US, then that's an advantage. That means they won't be able to sell competitively again in the US. That is giving Africa an opportunity. That is giving Africa an opportunity. So let's look at the potential market. Of course, if you are familiar with market demand in the US is the largest importer in the world with about $3 trillion in demand. Equipment, machinery that US buys about 911 billion. Vehicles, transport, cars that US buys about $417 billion. Drugs and chemical products that US buys about $316 billion. Crude oil, crude oil that US buys about $276 billion. Metal product that US buys about $167 billion. Medical and medical instrument, chemical instrument that US buy, chemical analysis instrument, X-ray equipment, measuring instrument generally, that US buys about $125 billion. Textile, clothing materials that US buys about $122 billion. Furniture, toys, games that US buys about $119 billion. Plastic product that US buy and rubber product US buys about $114 billion. Food item that US buys about $98 billion. Precious stone and metals that US buys about $75 billion. Vegetable product that US buys about $62 billion. Animal product that US buys about $41.9 billion. Leather footwears, rubber footwears that US buy and textile food that US buys about $32.5 billion. Paper products that US buy is about $29.7 billion. Then stone products. By stone product, I mean glass bottles, glass products, building stone, and the like, that US buy is about $25.8 billion. It's about $25.8 billion. Wood products that US buy, is about $24.8 billion. Vegetable oil products that US buy is about $16.6 billion. Leather product that US buy is about $14.6 billion. Paintings and antiques and artifacts that US buy is about $7.2 billion. Now, where does US buy from? 14% of US import is from China. 15% of US import is from Mexico. 13.6% of US import is from Canada. And that's why those were the three countries that US focused on when it started this issue. Those are the three countries focused on. Then, Vietnam, 3.92%. Germany, 5.42%. Japan, 4.77%. Ireland, 2.25%. Brazil, 1.23%. UK, about 2%. France, about 2%. Switzerland, about 1.5%. Thailand, about 2%. India, about 2.85%, about 3%. Japan, about 6%, about 5%. And Korea, about 4%. Major sources of import of the US is China, Mexico, and Canada. That's very important. China, Mexico, and Canada. And if you go and look at the list of Trump, China is 34%. China is 34%. This list does not have Mexico and Canada because they already have, I think, about 25% that was slammed on them before now. So they are not on the new list of Trump. But they have about over 20%, both of them. Over 20%. Now, Germany is under European Union, 20%. All the European Union countries, 20%. United Kingdom, 10%. Now, I'm mentioning that. Let's look at Malaysia and Indonesia. Indonesia, 32%. Malaysia, 24%. Indonesia and Malaysia supply oil, palm oil, to the US. Nigeria can take advantage of palm oil right now because, you know, the idea of this conversation is this. These other countries, they are producing more efficiently. Because they are producing more efficiently, that is making Nigeria and Africa uncompetitive. Because we are paying pretty much similar tariff. Now that their tariff has gone up, and our tariff is lower than theirs, that gives us an advantage. It's now a research for an exporter to check. Okay, now that Indonesia is paying 34%, 32%, Malaysia is paying 24%, Nigeria is paying 14%, can this make my palm oil more competitive in the US? That's exactly the whole idea of this conversation. That's the summary of the conversation I'm having today. That's the summary of the conversation I'm having today. Now, let's look at Africa. Let's look at Africa. And this is really very sad. Very, very sad. What I mean is this. And this calls for, we need to do a rethink, actually, to do something about the whole of Africa. Look at what I mean. Total demand of US about 3 trillion. Can you guess how much of all the 3 trillion import of the US is coming from Africa? 40 billion. US reliance on Africa is extremely low. 40 billion. 40 billion. That speaks volume in terms of what the whole of the US is importing. 3 trillion. 10% of that is 300 billion. 1% of that is 30 billion. So Africa import of US from Africa is just about 1% of the whole of US import. 1%. 1%. Now, Africa, Nigeria have the opportunity. Africa, Nigeria have the opportunity to be able to increase the volume of its export. The volume of its export. Particularly countries in Africa that have low duty slammed on them from the US or low tariff slammed on them from the US. Such country will include Egypt, 10%. Such country will include Morocco, 10%. Such country will include, and I'm looking at a country in Africa that is lower than 20%. Such country will include Kenya, 10%. Such country will include Nigeria, 14%. Such country will include Ethiopia, 10%. Such country will include Ghana, 10%. But country like Botswana cannot be on this list, 37%. Country like Morocco, like Cote d'Ivoire might not be able to make this list, 21%. Tunisia should not be able to make this list, 28%. Madagascar, 47%. So country in Africa that I think have an advantage on the new Trump list, we have Morocco, we have Nigeria, we have Kenya, we have Ethiopia, and we have Ghana. Ghana, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Ghana, Ethiopia, Nigeria are among the countries that will be able to take advantage of this Trump tariff. And even in Africa, South Africa is the largest exporter to US, 33%. Even in Africa, Nigeria is second to South Africa, 16%. 16%. Now, let's zero in on Nigeria. What Nigeria export to the US? What Nigeria export to the US? Total export is about 6.3 billion. Which is about 10% of Nigerian export, which is why I said Nigeria is about to lose 10%. But Nigeria can take advantage. And I will talk about what I think Nigeria can do to take advantage. And later on, I will come and talk about Africa as a whole. So, crude oil and gas, then fertilizer, lead, cocoa, soybeans, perfume plants, scrap, are different products. Precious stone, scrap metal, different products. Now, I will now take them one by one. Crude petroleum. Who are the current major exporters? Canada, Mexico. Canada and Mexico tariff are more. I think about 25% more. So Nigeria can leverage this to increase its crude petrol. That's if NNPC have not sold everything in swap and such that we're not even getting enough to like it. So Nigeria currently exports 2.8% of crude oil import by the US. So this is an opportunity for Nigeria. Nigeria can take advantage of crude oil and gas. Nigeria, in fact, in Africa, Nigeria is the major exporter of crude oil, 48% to US. How about gas? Canada is currently the major exporter. Do you know that Nigeria is the second largest exporter of gas to the US? If Canada now have a high tariff and Nigeria is having, Canada is about 25, Nigeria is about 14. Nigeria is an advantage. Nigeria can leverage on gas because Nigeria is the second largest gas exporter to the US. US buy more gas from Nigeria than any other country beside Canada. So gas is an advantage. Crude oil is an advantage that Nigeria can leverage on. And in Africa, about 80% of gas export to the US by Africa is from Nigeria. How about nitrogenous fertilizer? Russia, because of the issue with Russia right now, in terms of what's the name? In terms of what do you call it? Sanction, and the high rate in Canada, Algeria 30%, Nigeria have an advantage in nitrogen fertilizer. Nigeria has an advantage. This is the third product. Nigeria has an advantage in nitrogen fertilizer because all the other people that are ahead of Nigeria, Nigeria is a lot better off. Apart from Qatar, Qatar is about 10% tariff that US slam on them. Apart from Qatar and Oman, apart from Qatar, Saudi and Oman, apart from Qatar, Saudi and Oman, all of which are 10%. All of which are 10%. Nigeria is next on the list in terms of export possibility. Russia, sanction. Canada, high tariff. Algeria, high tariff. And Nigeria next on the list. So Nigeria have an advantage. And in Africa, after Algeria, Nigeria is the next in terms of fertilizer export to the US. But with a high tariff on Algeria of 30% and with a tariff of 14% by Nigeria, Nigeria stand a chance to grow its export of fertilizer to the US. Let's look at lead article. Now, who are the major exporters of lead article to the US? Canada, Mexico, South Korea, Australia. Let's check the tariff of the US on Canada. Canada is 25%. What is the tariff on South Korea? What is the tariff on South Korea? South Korea is 25%. South Korea is 25%. Canada and Mexico already have a high tariff. South Korea joined them. Let me check now. Australia is at an advantage. Australia is 10% at an advantage. Kazakhstan is 27%. Kazakhstan doesn't have an advantage. So on this list for lead article, Nigeria and Australia are well positioned to increase its export to the US. To increase its export to the US, Nigeria and Australia are well positioned to increase its export to the US. So for me, I think this is a blessing in disguise. You know, as I was looking at this data, it just occurred to me that I hope Nigeria will be able to take advantage of this. I don't know. I'm not hearing a lot among the government cycle on this issue, and it's unfortunate actually. And I'm expecting to hear a lot from the government cycle on this issue. I'm not hearing a lot. And that's not good, actually. It's not good. And the reason I say it's not good is I feel someone should be looking at this data within the government cycle in Nigeria and begin to take advantage of this to the US market. To the US market. In Africa, Nigeria is the largest exporter of lead article to the US. Next is Ghana. Another product, cocoa product. Canada and Mexico are a major supplier of cocoa product, cocoa derivatives. Canada and Mexico, major supplier, but they are under high sanction. Now, we are left with Europe. Europeans are 20%, so they are higher. Malaysia and Indonesia are higher, over 30%. So, who is left? Ecuador, 10%. Ghana, 10%. Ecuador, 10%. Ghana, 10%. Nigeria, 10%. Nigeria, 10%. Cote d'Ivoire is 21%. So, who are those that are at an advantage to be able to sell more cocoa product to the US? Nigeria, Ghana, and Ecuador. Nigeria, Ghana, and Ecuador should be able to sell this product, cocoa product, to the US cheaper. So with an advantage for cocoa product. What I'm discovering, or I discovered through this data, is that, quite frankly, Nigeria, this might just be a blessing for Nigeria. As against my video last week. And as when I did the video last week, I'm not looking at this data. I was just talking, I was talking based on what I can see, but the data is saying otherwise. So Nigeria should be able to overtake Cote d'Ivoire now in export of cocoa product to Ghana, because Cote d'Ivoire is the highest, 70% to US, and they're followed by Ghana, followed by Nigeria. But Nigeria now can take over and compete because Nigeria is 40% and the Cote d'Ivoire tariff is 21%. Another product, oilseed. Another product, oilseed, for which America buys $30 billion. Who are the major exporter of this product? Canada. But Canada is having 25% tariff. Canada is having 25% tariff. India is 26% tariff. China is 34% tariff. Brazil is at an advantage, 10%. Chile, 10%. Europeans, 20%. Nigeria is at an advantage here. Brazil, Chile, Nigeria, Australia are at an advantage for oilseed export to the US. And in Africa, Nigeria is the largest exporter of oilseed to the US. 27% of African export to the US on oilseed is from Nigeria. How about plastic product? $79 billion demand. 79 billion. Plastic product. China is a major exporter, but China is 34% tariff. Canada and Mexico are major exporter, but they also have a high tariff. European are major exporter. They also have a high tariff. Japan have a high tariff. South Korea have a higher tariff. Nigeria currently exports very low volume of this to the US. Very, very low, less than $20 million. Actually, about 6% in Africa. In Africa, South Africa is a major exporter, but South Africa is having a high tariff. Even Egypt is a major exporter of this product. So Egypt is 10%. Egypt is at an advantage because Egypt is 10%. Egypt is at an advantage. Tunisia is 28%. Tunisia is not an advantage. So apart from Morocco, that is 10%, Egypt, 10%, Nigeria, 10%, other countries in Africa should not be able to compete with Nigeria. Edible fruit export. Edible fruit and not 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 export. To the US. Edible fruit and not export to the US. Edible fruit and not export to the US is $22 billion demand. Mexico is a major exporter of this product, but Mexico is already having a higher tariff. Chile, 10%. Chile can still do this comfortably. Ecuador, 10%. Ecuador can still do this comfortably. Let's check countries that Nigeria should be able to take advantage of. Because currently in Africa, Nigeria export of this product is very low, 1.36. South Africa will not be able to take advantage of it. Cote d'Ivoire will not be able to take advantage of it. Egypt, Kenya, and Morocco will be able to. Nigeria will not be able to do a lot in this space because of the volume we are currently doing and the fact that we have other cheaper suppliers in Africa. Cut flowers. For cut flowers in Africa, apart from Nigeria, Ethiopia have a higher tariff, South Africa have a higher tariff, Nigeria and Kenya at an advantage in the export of this product. And then fish and crustacean, $20 billion demand. Fish and crustacean. China, India, Vietnam, Indonesia are major exporters of this product, including Canada and Norway, but they are all slam high tariff, more than 20%. Chile and Ecuador are 10%. Chile and Ecuador are 10%. Plus Nigeria. Plus Nigeria in Africa, being a major exporter of this product to the US. South Africa is already at a high tariff. South Africa is already at a high tariff, 30%. So South Africa is not going to be more competitive than Nigeria in this product. But Egypt is 10% and Nigeria is 10%. And both of them will be able to compete favorably on this product. As a round-off, my proposal to the government to take advantage of the 14% tariffs on Nigeria, which is better than many other countries who is currently supplying US. We need to target product gap from China and Asia due to high US tariff and focus on goods now facing tariff from China, such as furniture, electronics, textile, apparel, steel, and aluminum products. And Nigeria can take advantage of textile and leather products. Nigeria must move from raw to value add. Nigeria heavily dependent on crude oil, but there is demand for crude oil. We need to add more value. Refined petroleum, processed cocoa, finished fertilizer, package and branded agriculture like shea butter. Value addition, give higher margin plus better access to US niche market. Expand garment and textile product to the US. US retailers are seeking China alternative. Because of the high tariff on China, Nigeria can attract investment into export garment zone, cutting value chain, ready-made garment, uniform, and worker wear. Build a brand around made in Nigeria fashion using Nigerian print and design. Leveraging e-commerce to be able to sell this product also on Amazon. Using digital marketing, social media, and influencer partnership. Improve port and custom efficiency, reducing congestion, which is already reducing Apapa, and fully digitized trade. That has not been done. So we need faster logistics. The shipping line must find our location good enough so we won't be paying higher freight. That means we must be efficient so that more vessels can come in so that the cost of transport to the US can be reduced. And there's need for capacity building, export readiness, to be able to ensure that the product meets US FDA certification program. HACCP, for example, GMP, for example, organic certification, for example. And then, because Nigeria have low tax, attracting investment from the US into Nigeria, producing in Nigeria. However, this has to happen in a free trade zone. But more importantly, there must be tax incentive because of the challenge of power. Partnership with US ventures to be able to produce in Nigeria because raw material available in Nigeria for the export to the US market. Market Nigeria as a friendshoring destination aligned with US interest. Expand non-oil export sector with export potential. Focus on non-oil export as sector for US market. Agriculture, fertilizer, leather, jewelry craft. Nigeria should lead in some of these. Just need branding. We just need branding and packaging and export support. And lastly, NEPC need to provide support, grant, match Nigerian producers with US products, and run. We need to empower NEPC to match Nigerian producer with US buyers, to run US road shows and virtual trade expo, offer grant to support exporter for us to be able to take advantage of this huge opportunity in the US market as a result of the Trump tariff. As I conclude, if we want to grow our economy, diversify our economy, create jobs, boost our foreign reserves, aggressive drive for taking advantage of the Trump tariff is the way to go. Thank you very much.